So I won't take much more time because the important thing here is for Gloria to begin. She's here from Lugano, and she's talking about the creative industry of branded content marketing.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here, and I would like to thank once again Jonathan and Patricia for organizing this seminar, which comes at a particularly timely moment for me, as earlier this year I submitted a research project on branded content, and I am currently waiting for the response, which should be arriving very soon, so fingers crossed. And so today I will briefly present some of the conceptual premises, research questions, and very briefly methodological design of my project, which I hope could elicit some possible comments and suggestions for improvement, and maybe even trigger some thoughts on possible direction in terms of collaborative and comparative research. So my project, that's basically the title. I submitted this project to Swiss National Science Foundation, which is Switzerland's main funding body for academic research, and particularly within this program, this framework that is called Early Postdoc Mobility. And so if successful, this is an individual grant that would allow me to stay 18 months here at the University of East London. But also, if looking further ahead, this grant could be a good basis for further transnational research project and funding bids, particularly in the form, as I said, of transnational projects. And to this regard, it may be interesting to know, in case you don't already know, that Switzerland and the UK have a bilateral agreement on research funding that is called, skipped to John Carver too soon. That's called Money Follows Cooperation Line, and basically it's a program that enables researchers in British universities to conduct part of their research in Switzerland and vice versa, and be funded by both countries for this project. So this, of course, may be a good opportunity, especially until the outcomes of Brexit remain uncertain in terms of research funding. So back to my project. The main purpose of this project is to examine, first of all, a little background. My background is in media studies, and particularly I try to apply some critical perspective on media studies and on the blurring between media and commercial content. So this is the kind of perspective I try to bring on branded content research. So the main purpose is to examine how and why the notion of creativity underpins and shapes what is called the industrial identity of branded content marketing. The idea of industrial identity theory was developed by, or among other people, by American media scholar John Caldwell, who described this way. We can profitably view branding, syndication, and marketing theory as a form of industrial identity theory. While such things have their own, branding, syndication, and marketing, have their own literature in management studies and in the business trade, I want to ask different questions. Specifically, how do organizational identity goals drive these activities? With what kind of cultural metaphors and tropes are deployed to achieve these ends? And finally, what kind of economic logic does each identity activity fulfill in film and television? Now, John Caldwell asked those questions with regards to film and television industry, while I would like to do something similar with branded content and the trope of creativity. So as a psychological and aesthetic notion, creativity is, of course, nothing new to the promotional sector. It has always been crucial to the promotional sector. But as a term, as a semantic construct, it has grown, I think we can say, ubiquitous in recent years, to the point of subsuming and replacing some long-established and even more industry-specific terms such as advertising. And we can see it exemplified very well by the rebranding, it was mentioned earlier this morning, of the Cannes Lion Festival, which in 2011 switched from International Advertising Festival to International Festival of Creativity. So basically what I argue here is that the rhetorical use of creativity and related terms such as storytelling, entertainment, engagement, inspiration in marketing discourse is somewhat akin to the one which has been characterizing the media and cultural discourse and the media and cultural sectors since the publication of the first Creative Industries mapping document in the late 90s in the UK, and afterwards basically in every modern democracy around the world. So as you know, scholars in sociology, political economy and cultural theory have extensively investigated the issue of how creativity has been strategically used to, in the context of neoliberal reforms, and particularly how this has affected labor in the so-called creative industries. Here I put just a handful of examples of books, dealing with this kind of issue. Most of them are from the UK or US context, but there are also French and German studies on this subject. So if we look at the literature, and especially if we look at the ethnographic studies on this subject, there is a recurring topic, a recurring issue that strikes me as somewhat paradoxical, and that is that despite the term creativity has expanded in use in official discourses, workers in the creative industries retain a rather narrow opinion of what genuine creativity is, and they tend to situate it outside the commercial realm. So there is a kind of oppositional idea between an artistic, let's say, creativity and a commercial creativity. And this has been proved by these and others ethnographic accounts to be valid and to be resilient in different creative sectors, so in film and television, in fine arts, in music, in performing arts, in fashion design, and also, and a bit more surprisingly, in advertising as well. So, moving from such premises, my project basically aims to respond to 5 main research objectives. The first one is to demonstrate how branded content marketers construct their industrial identity in terms of creativity and entertainment, as opposed to commerce and advertising. The second one is to analyze how the creative industrial identity of branded content is constructed, we can say, top-down, through the use of a rhetoric of creativity in official industry text. Then, to verify whether and how this kind of top-down perspective of the creative identity of branded content is raised or rejected or negotiated bottom-up by individual actors working in this sector, and particularly by the 2 traditionally opposed categories of so-called suits and creatives, so people working in management, we can say, broadly speaking, and people working in creative production. And then to uncover the specific logics that frame the attitudes of these categories of workers towards the creative industrial identity of branded content, and particularly moving from Bourdieu, the economic and artistic logic. And finally, to understand whether and how such attitudes may affect workers in their so-called work-based identities, which is a notion particularly used in organizational sociology. From a methodological perspective, I will use mostly two main approaches. So for the first part of the project, I will use basically textual analysis. I will conduct textual analysis on a selection of publicly available official industry texts, such as industry reports, guidelines for best practices, news, research papers, and so on, from official industry reports such as the Branded Content Marketing Association, the Institute of Practitioners in Advertising, and of course the Cannes Lion Festival. And then, of course, some ethnographic studies will be needed, and I was thinking about semi-structured interviews with individual actors in branded content marketing, as I said, from the management sector and the creative sector. And since, you know, gaining access to professionals is, as you know, quite hard, I think to kind of integrate these interviews with so-called interface ethnography, so it's a kind of observational work done in the context of semi-public industry events, such as these kind of gathering, for instance. And just a quick note, I will focus on professionals working in the production of branded content in the form of audiovisual, because as someone said earlier this morning, it is the most used format for branded content, and also I think it lends itself particularly well to comparison between media labor and advertising or commercial labor, because very often people working in content marketing do also work for personal creative and artistic projects. So this will be interesting. So this is basically a quick glimpse of the project, and because of time constraints, of course, I cannot go too much into details, for instance, about how the sample will be selected, but I am, and also about the theoretical underpinning of the project, but I'm, of course, very, very happy to discuss more in details with whoever may be interested. So thank you very much.